Hey guys, thanks for stopping by my channel. Today I'm going to adjust the preload on the rear suspension of my Interceptor 650. The bike has two single coilover shocks, they have an 88mm travel, and a 6-position adjustable preload. Some people are putting the preload on the softest setting to lower the bike, but the preload should actually be set up for the load on the bike. This includes the rider and gear, a passenger if you usually have one, and any cargo that you might ride around with. What we want out of the suspension is the best stability and traction that we could possibly get. Motorcycles are built with a suspension geometry that includes the height of the motorcycle and the angle of the front fork. And in order to get the best performance out of the suspension, the front fork and the rear shocks need to interact properly with each other. Adjusting the preload is actually really important because it changes the height of the bike, and that's going to change the angle of the front fork. This is going to have an effect on the control and the balance of the motorcycle, because anytime you change the height of the bike up or down, you're changing the center of gravity. If the preload isn't set correctly, the front fork could either be too steep or too flat, and that could result in over or understeering, and it's going to have a major effect on the overall handling of the bike. In order to know if the preload is adjusted properly, I need to get the free sag and the rider sag measurements. The free sag is the measurement of how much the suspension compresses under the weight of the bike by itself, and the rider sag is how much it compresses under the weight of the bike and the rider plus gear. If you don't have a helper like I don't, I'm going to show you something so you can do this by yourself. I've taken the Allen wrench out of the toolkit from the bike, and I've put it in the bolt on the rear shock, and I've got a piece of masking tape holding it in place. Then I took a piece of string and I tied a loop in one end. And I'm going to put this over the retaining nut on the rear of the swing arm. Then I'll bring the other end of the string up through this rack and over the Allen wrench. I've got the string going straight up and down because that's the measurement we want to get. You don't want to measure at an angle. Before you take the first measurement, the rear suspension needs to be fully extended. So I've got the bike on the center stand and the rear tire is off the ground. I used a pen and I marked a line on the masking tape holding the Allen wrench. That's going to be my reference point. And I put some masking tape on the string, and that's where I'm going to mark my measurements. Since the suspension is fully extended, I'm going to mark my first measurement and I'm going to line it up with my reference point. Now I'm going to take the bike off the center stand and I'll put another mark on the string at the reference point. So now all the weight of the bike is on the suspension. I'll take my pen and I'll put a mark at my reference point. When you take the last measurement, you need to be fully geared up. Just sit on the bike and you can turn around and put a mark at the reference point. A lot of the big shock manufacturers and race teams recommend setting the free sag around 10% of the shock travel, and they recommend setting the rider sag around 30% of the shock travel. There's a little bit of leeway there because sometimes you sit further up closer to the tank, and sometimes you sit a little further back, and that changes things. So they recommend that the free sag be set between 5% and 15% of the shock travel, and that the rider sag be between 25% and 35% of the shock travel. So the free sag on my bike should be between 4.4 and 13.2 millimeters. I ended up getting a measurement of 17 millimeters. and the rider sag should be between 22 and 31 millimeters. I ended up getting a measurement of 35, so I definitely need to adjust the preload. If you go to the toolkit on the bike, there's a C-spanner tool you're going to need to adjust the preload. You just put it in this groove, and if you turn it counterclockwise, it raises the bike. If you turn it clockwise, it lowers the bike. Once you adjust the preload, you need to remeasure the free sag and the rider sag, and you might have to redo the whole process a couple times until you get everything where you want it. Well, that's all I've got for today, guys. Thanks for watching. If you haven't already, go ahead, click subscribe, and stay up to date with my latest videos. Well, thanks again, and have a wonderful day.